Hello and welcome to another edition of the Talking City podcast with myself, Alex James, and City writer Joe Bray. Welcome back, Joe, from your jollies. Are you well?
I'm not bad. Yeah, I've been a while since I've been on one of these podcasts. I think before the Kevin De Bruyne news.
Been on holiday.
No, I did have a little break, so I was passed it on to you for the Palace game, but looks like I made a pretty good one.
Yeah, it was you missed a pretty good second half and last 15 minutes of the first half, I would say. After about 25 minutes, I think there were plenty of heads turning around to each other at the Etihad, wondering what was going on, and probably would rather have been in whichever beer garden you were in at that point. But it got progressively better after that.
Yeah, I was on a boat in Prague actually, and we were getting the notifications so it's like it's 1-0, it's 2-0, and we were thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And then by the time we got off, it was 5-2, so it was much better.
There feels like there should be several follow-up questions to the sentence "I was on a boat in Prague," but it might be what stays on the boat in Prague. What goes on the boat in Prague stays on the boat in Prague. Perhaps.
No comment.
We shall move on to the football, and obviously you'll be back in situ this weekend, and final trip to Goodison for everybody associated with City in terms of supporters, players, and media and staff, etc. And it's going to be a tricky game, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, and it always is, isn't it? At Goodison Park, the last couple have maybe been a little bit more straightforward, but there's a couple of tight wins that you can sort of remember, and even if City win, they might have gone behind, and I mean Everton will want to taking every sort of last drop of Goodison, and no better way than to beat a team like City on the way, and they've sort of got a little bit of a resurgence when Moyes came back and then dropped off a bit. But I think it will be, looking at where City are and looking at what Everton want to do before the end of the season, I think it'll be hopefully quite a good open game. But City just need to win. They can't really look at the emotion of it, because I mean, especially with Newcastle winning last night and going third, and the results aren't going to fall their way, so they've just got to look after themselves. And if they do that, they'll get top 5. But if they take their eye off the ball and sort of look at the architecture of Goodison Park, it's not going to go their way, is it?
No, exactly. And I can't see it being a straightforward. I mean, I think City's record at Goodison is pretty good since I remember them getting beat 4-0. Oh, that was a while ago now. 2017, 2018, something like that. But I'm not sure they've lost a game at Goodison since then. But this City
that was
team,
sort of a turning point in Guardiola's sort of early period, and he sort of decided that things had to get better. And they've had a few of those big defeats this season where it sort of prompted the rebuild. So he doesn't want to repeat of that. He's had that sort of moment and that realization. But no, since then there have been some much better ones. I'm thinking of like the Rodri handball that wasn't a handball when City went on to win the title, and all of those. Something always happens. Gundogan's sort of brilliant flick a couple of years ago on the way to the treble when he was just unstoppable, and Foden sort of turned it into his playground last year. So it's a place where they've done well, but they've always had to work for it.
Yeah, and I think it's a big chance this for City, because obviously they played an early kickoff last week and they came through that. They got the job done. Then Forest got beat. Chelsea didn't win. Similar-ish kind of story this weekend, because they're playing at 3:00. Newcastle are then playing Villa in the tea time game. Chelsea, obviously, with the European commitments, don't play till Sunday. There's an opportunity to put. I think Forest are playing Monday as well this week, actually. So there's an opportunity to put the pressure on the teams in and around them in that kind of race for the Champions League, and the City are going to have to sort of string together 2 or 3 wins. If those 2 or 3 wins are these next 2 or 3 games, that's 1 foot in the top 5, I would suggest.
Yeah, and I mean that Villa game's on the horizon next week, and that's really, really important. They're a point behind. They're very, very capable of getting that top 5, and we saw what they did to PSG. They've got a lot of fight in them. So have Chelsea, Newcastle, and Forest don't look like they want to give up those spots. So it's all there to play for, and they need to do it. Maybe playing at 3 p.m, not on telly, like you say. They had the early kickoff last time. It might help them going under the radar a little bit. I don't know. I think they've just got to focus on getting those wins. And I think there was a quote from Gundogan this week where he said we're treating it like a title race, because in those title races they just have to go game by game, not think about what's the next game after this one, just focus on winning this and put those runs together. They're not maybe not the same quality as they have been in these title races, but they can apply that same mindset and only look at themselves rather than everyone else. We can look at everyone else, but I think they just need to sort of have that tunnel vision and look at it. So it's they could have an advantage in that way because those players have been there and done it, and Pep's looking like he's preferring the players who have the experience of having an end goal and chasing it and getting it. So yeah, maybe he's dropped a couple of clues of how he wants to approach it going into the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be much of a podcast if we just took it one game at a time and just focused on that without looking at the bigger picture. We can't operate like the one game at a time mentality like the players do. And we sort of spoke about this briefly on the podcast earlier in the week, but you touched on it there. The way City have lined up in recent weeks, they've kind of gone away from the Savinho, Doku wingers that Pep seemed to have settled on earlier in the season as the way forward, and a kind of a new look City, and they've reverted to the tried and tested, the experience, and a bit of a narrow shape. And it feels like it doesn't feel like there's an obvious route back into the team at the moment for Savinho or Doku or Jack Grealish for that matter, who seems to have fallen behind James McAtee now in the pecking order.
Yeah, you can't keep up, can you? Every time you see the team, it's not what you expect. And we used to be in sort of caught off guard by what Guardiola's thinking, but it was only like 6 weeks or so ago where he was calling sort of Savinho, Doku and Haaland the future of his team, and they're scoring that brilliant goal at Spurs, and you got Gonzalez pushing up behind them and Marmoush causing trouble. And yeah, I know Haaland's been injured, so that takes away a lot, and you probably got to... Marmoush isn't the same player if you've got Doku and Savinho to put balls in. You can rely on Haaland being there. You can't necessarily rely on Marmoush because he's a different player and he offers different things, and he's sort of better in the build-up. So maybe then you've got to go for the maybe more narrower, compact system. It is tricky, but it does feel like he's, at the same time, I think he said he's not picked Gonzalez because he wants to go with the players who've been there. So you can see both sides. I think fans would like to see a bit more of an attacking system. At the same time, Doku and Savinho are both a little bit inconsistent with the performances. And do you want sort of slow and steady and get the result, or it could be 4-0 or it could be 0-1 or whatever you want? You can't always rely on those players. So until they've got that system, I think you need Haaland in there. Maybe that's why he's changing it around a little bit. But every time he picks the likes of, Gundogan, Kovacic, even De Bruyne, Grealish, they're very, very good players, but together they are slow, and that sort of tells you what kind of game you're going to get. And that's why when Palace went 2-0 up, you're thinking, you can't necessarily see it turning around. So credit to them for doing that and scoring some good goals in the process.
Yeah, and it was obviously surprising, but pleasing, I would say, to see McAtee come into the team. Mm-hmm. And I spoke with Si about this earlier in the week for anyone who wants to go back and listen to that podcast from earlier in the week. But he sort of took his opportunity. Nico O'Reilly has somehow emerged as a left back for the ages in recent weeks. He was targeted quite heavily in that first half at Palace in terms of how they kind of set up and went about attacking City. But he stuck to his game, and in the end, he's coming off with another goal. Encouraging to see these kind of players come through the academy, be given an opportunity, and then take those opportunities as well, because we've all seen how good City's academy has been over the last 5 or 10 years. But a lot of those players are now playing at other Premier League clubs and not in, Foden's obviously the exception, but there's a heck of a lot of talent that has gone elsewhere for big money. And I always think it's pleasing to see a couple of the young lads come through. And there's potentially more in the pipeline as well, given how well you've got a handle on the academy, but given how well the 21s have done this season, given how well the 18s have done back-to-back Youth Cup finals. So there's a healthy crop of youngsters coming at the moment.
Yeah, and you've got sort of Rico Lewis to add to that, who's not had the most amazing season, but he's always been there, and he's 20, 21, and he's got over 50, 60 appearances for City, and I think he's one of the most used players this season. So they are increasingly able to rely on these players. And I think if you said 12 months ago that O'Reilly would be scoring goals at left back in sort of big Premier League comebacks and single-handedly dragging City into a FA Cup semi-final, you'd probably be laughed at by O'Reilly himself and sort of his coaches in the academy. He was always a good player, but a good attacking midfielder, and not necessarily, I don't want to say first team ready, but there's such competition there. But he went on tour and they needed a defensive midfielder because Calvin Phillips was not very good in that position and no one else was there. And he goes there and scores against Barcelona and does really well. And then he gets his chance and he's had to wait. And suddenly he's gone back to a left back. He'll probably be playing in goal next season because he just keeps going further back. But he's that sort of player, and City build these players. There's a handful in every youth team who can play in multiple positions, and there's some players like, I don't know, like Liam Delap and Cole Palmer who are set in their positions, but there are others a bit like Rico Lewis and O'Reilly definitely, but McAtee to an extent who can play along, be a bit more versatile, play across the midfield or defence. And I think they're the players that we're increasingly seeing are being picked by Guardiola, because if you are, I think McAtee's struggled because he's got so much competition in that sort of attacking midfield area. But if you're a youngster who can say, I'll play at left back one week and right midfield the next, and that's probably how you're going to get your chance, rather than just saying, I want to play at number 9, because you're not going to do that. You're not going to take Haaland or De Bruyne or Foden out of the team, but you can every now and again come off the bench and do a little bit. I suppose Oscar Bobb's another one. He's played across the front line. Pep wanted him to be a false 9 and sort of a deputy to Haaland before he got injured. They're the kind of players that he likes. So I suppose if you're a player coming through, focus on that versatility and be open to a new position, because that might be your route into the first team.
Yeah, and you've seen a bit of the 18s and 21s this season. Just who kind of catches your eye, and if you look ahead to next season, City are going to need to get a bit younger. They're going to need to spend some money, but they also might have a few in-house solutions here. And the Club World Cup is potentially like the perfect option. You were saying there about Nico O'Reilly took his chance on tour in the States. The Club World Cup is potentially the perfect environment for somebody else to put their hand up, or more than one player to put their hand up. Does anybody kind of look to you as if they're the next sort of cab off the rank?
It's interesting because I'm going to stall a little bit, but the Club World Cup's interesting because I think it's like if we expect like a 25-man squad, I don't think they've confirmed it, but that's tallies with the last Country World Cup. City have a 25-man squad basically now in the Premier League, but you've got players like, will De Bruyne go, will McAtee or Lewis play with the England under-21s at their tournament? There's a few players who might be in line for being sold. So there's probably 2 or 3 spots that might be available. I think the under-21s have been a bit different this season. They've been very good, but they've been quite just sort of consistent and compact. There's not necessarily a Delap or a Palmer in previous years, or even like McAtee was stormed at PL2 level. There's no one who's scoring loads and loads of goals. They've got Mabama, who's obviously scored for the first team this year, and Abowodo, who's been there for quite a while. I thought this would be the year he'd really kick on. He's done well. He's just been there. You've got defence like Simpson Pusey and Kyle Samuel, and they're all good players. There's probably no one who's, I would say, is jumping out, but you can also look at that team and say quite a lot of them have experience with the first team, whether it's training or playing earlier in the season or being on tour, and Pep will know who he wants and who he's looking at. I think the ones who are standing out are more in the 18s. So you've got Regan Heskey, who's scoring very good goals for fun. Do you know what? As I started answering the question, there's another name who was coming to mind. Divine Mikasa, of course, he's the one who's scoring goals and goals and goals, and loads of assists, and he's attracting interest. And they're the ones who are maybe getting the headlines more than the 21s. But if you're looking at the versatile players and the consistent players, could it be someone who you don't fancy who's gonna maybe get picked and take that step up? But I think it's very significant that the 21s have won won the PL2 in inverted commas because they finished first, but they don't win a trophy for it, and they're not allowed to call themselves champions until they go through the playoff system. But they've been the best team in that format, and they will hope that they can go further and get that back, because they basically completed the old league format, and then they mixed it up and added these weird seedings, and they play 20 different teams out of 26 once rather than every team twice, and it sort of threw them off last season, and injuries and call-ups, and they were extremely poor, and I think everyone would accept that. And they decided to part ways with Brian Barry Murphy, and Ben Wilkinson stepped up, and he's sort of got them back into a winning team again. And whether that's because he knows the players or they've got a more consistent team, I think it was just a season of circumstance last season, maybe a bit like the first team we've had this year. So it's good to see them back on top, and it'll be interesting to see what they've learned and how they can put that into the playoff format. But you've got the 18s. They beat Liverpool very easily this week, and they should win the North title. Then they'll fancy themselves in the national title, another youth cup. They really fancy themselves. The 18s, by the way, have won 25 games in a row, which is ridiculous,
staggering.
And we spoke to Kean Noble, the defender, last week, and he said it means nothing if we don't win the cup and the league. Now, I don't want to sit here at the end of the season and say we've just won 23 games in a row, as it was at the time. We're only bothered if we win back-to-back youth cups and get that league back off United. So there's a real desire to win, but it will be interesting to see which players take that experience and sort of do what they can to impress Guardiola. Because if you look at O'Reilly, he was the one who probably had the best chance but wasn't expecting to take it, and he got that real opportunity in the US when no players were there, and he's not looked back. So it's they need to work out where that opportunity is. Have they got the time to do it at the Club World Cup, or maybe at the start of the season when all the players are tired, and take it like that? So I can't give you a specific answer of this player is definitely going to do it, because you never know. And all the players who have made it, and maybe the ones you don't expect.
The likes of, I mean, Mikasa is one who's been talked about a lot in recent weeks with good reason, because just if you look at his statistics alone, I think they're staggering, sort of goal every game almost, and similar with Regan Heskey. But I think they're both 17. One of them might be 18 now, but that feels a big leap from 17 and under 18s football. So it does feel like they need another year of bridging between academy and first team before they might get any kind of extended run. I know you do get 17-year-old players who just leap out and go straight into top level football, but I would suggest they're rarer and rarer now. It's not that often we see that anywhere, let alone at a club like City. I mean, Simpson Pusey's an interesting one, isn't he? Because he's obviously come through. He's been trusted by Guardiola already. He's played 3 games earlier in the season, and then has sort of dipped back down to the 21s, but is in a position where City have got several question marks, obviously several injuries, a little bit of uncertainty around a couple of those defenders long term. Can John Stones stay fit long enough? What's going to happen to Nathan Ake, Manuel Akanji, these kind of players long term? He's one who perhaps you can see the path there, because he's had a little taste of it already. He's obviously done whatever it is that the coaching staff and Guardiola want. Perhaps he might be the one who can take advantage of a little bit of uncertainty in that defensive lineup. Although I know they've signed Kuznov and Vitor Rice and spent 50 odd million on those two as well. So
yeah, I mean, how's his luck where he's broken into this team and they weren't doing very well, but he sort of came through it. He will be better for being pumped at Sporting and losing at Brighton and games like that. And then he gets injured and he comes back, and City have signed 60 million pounds on players in his position at the same age, and have put them in the first team. And I mean, you can see with Kusanov, he's ahead of where Simpson Pusey is, and we've not seen much of Race, but you get the feeling he's maybe a little bit more what they want in that position. So it is tough for a player like that, but they're brought through the academy, basically told that they're not going to make it, and not that they're not going to make it, but only a very small percentage do. So aim for that, but it's never a surprise if they don't, and he will have a very good career elsewhere if it's not at City. But I would suggest he's probably, if you've done enough to persuade Guardiola to throw you in a Champions League game, even when you've got no players, you have something about you. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him and the other defenders, because they've got a lot of really good centre backs, and even in like the 18s, you're looking at Noble and Stefan Mafuni, and there's some really, really good players there, but there's a lot of competition in the way. So you probably, if you're looking at a certain position, that's probably the one that's most well stocked. And City have always done quite well with centre backs, and you're looking at Taylor Howard-Bellis and Callum Doyle, and they've brought through a decent number of sort of Championship, lower Premier League quality players. So if they can just get one that's in another step, then they'll probably save a little bit of money in future.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think, based on sort of what we've seen this season and what you said there, that the academy is going to perhaps offset any clear targets in the transfer market, because City are going to need reinforcements in quite a few positions, depending on how they want to go about it. You could argue 5 or 6 positions, really: goalkeeper, fullback. Going to need another crazy midfielder, probably. In now, De Bruyne has made that decision. Possibly a couple of centre halves. Like there's loads of plugs, loads of gaps you need to plug potentially in that team, and it doesn't feel like quite yet that the academy is ready to offer a couple of solutions to that, barring perhaps McAtee if Guardiola decides to go down the route of sort of trusting him with the first team minutes a little bit more.
Yeah, I wonder if the role of the academy, especially the under-21s this year, is to raise a bit of money, because you've got quite a lot of players who are doing very well. They might be a little bit further away from the first team, and the positions that City need to strengthen are probably maybe the weaker ones in the academy. But at the same time, the going rate for a City academy player who's doing quite well at PL2 is about 10, 15, 20 million pound. And for every Cole Palmer and Liam Delap and players like these who take really well to the Premier League, and even Morgan Rogers, who was sort of sold for £1 million and sort of underperformed by his own admission at City, he's now scoring in the Champions League and is playing for England, and there's money to be made on City players. So I think we've spoken about that quite a lot, but you can see how clubs would want to snap a player on relatively cheap money. City slap a big sell-on clause, and then everyone's happy when they go and make more money for that club who's bought them. So yeah, I'm looking at the names in the youth team, and there are nobody. I'm more than happy to be proved wrong. No one really stands out as the next Foden or Lewis or even O'Reilly, but I wouldn't have put O'Reilly in that category last year. So there is always that opportunity for somebody to just impress Guardiola and step up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think can the under 18s clinch their title this week? Is that right? Or certainly within the next couple of games, weeks?
I think they are 5 points ahead of United with 3 games to go, but United have 4 games left, so I think it's a little bit open. But they're well in contention, and United were brilliant last season. They won the league and the cup and did really well. So to take that title back will be quite satisfying if they can do it.
Absolutely. And we'll just move on briefly and touch on tickets, our old friend Tickets, which has been another sort of undercurrent to the season, really. And news this week that there's going to be another sort of couple of protests, and the City supporters have got a sort of a myriad of concerns, really, haven't they? Genuine and understandable concerns. And while I would say there's been a little bit of a willingness to listen from the club, given the sort of ticket announcement, when that had been the week before last, perhaps, that it doesn't feel like this is an issue that's done and dusted and is going to go away anytime soon. So just kind of briefly sort of bring everybody up to speed on what the situation is and what's next, if you can surmise it in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, so they had the protests against Leicester, very effective, probably surpassed expectations, and the club listened. And the subsequent meeting with City Matters City sort of agreed with the fans and said we'll freeze the prices. And I think City Matters have said they wanted to raise the prices by 2 or 3%. They've frozen season ticket prices and match day ticket prices, but the statement was missing any other detail.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting to know, will there be new season tickets? What's going to happen with the fees for the Flexi Gold tickets? When will the tickets go on sale? Because there's that mad rush at the start of the season. There's other concerns that the fans have that they've written to the club about and raised. I think the club and City Matters have gone away to discuss and think about the next steps of that. And the fan groups who organised the Leicester protest have said we're going to do 2 more protests to keep the pressure up. So there's going to be a protest outside the Villa game, just outside the main stand, to make feelings heard. They've decided they don't want to do a sort of a no-show or a stay out of your seat, so stay in the concourse, because that is such a big game and they want to give the backing to the team. So the next game after that against Wolves, there's going to be a 6-minute no-show, which represents 6 years since the last new season tickets went on sale. I think there's been a bit of maybe a few other fans questioning, why are you doing this again? You've got what you wanted, but the fans are quite clear that there's a lot of other underlying points that need resolving. And they've also said if the club announce good news from their point of view on tickets, then they'll call off these protests. And I think it's time to coincide with the next meeting with City Matters. So it will be interesting to see if it's effective, how many fans get on board, because loads of fans got on board with the last one, but having heard that the prices are staying the same, will they be as keen to miss the start of another game? So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes down. But I think the fans have shown that if they get together, they can make the voices heard in the right way, and the club are willing to listen. As much as the club need to answer a lot more questions on those tickets, I think we've got to say at some point that freezing the tickets is the right thing to do. So we need to know what the other points are. But it's good news on that front. Now we need to know what's going to happen with the other issues. And
I guess that's the point, isn't it? They've protested. The protest had the desired impact, and then part of the desired result. So same again, and we'll see if we can get some more answers and some more clarity and some more correct decisions from City, who, to their credit, stood up and listened on that point, and now perhaps have to do so again on a couple of other ticket situations to try and appease this, because it feels like it's run and run for most of this season, if not longer. We've got the North Stand coming 12 months down the road, which potentially adds another layer of complication, or, well, I'm not sure how it's all going to work. I don't think anybody quite knows the exact ticketing situation for that stand yet, but that's going to add more fuel to it anyway, regardless of the decisions that end up being taken. So it does feel like this is going to be a bit of a constant battle, might not be the right word, but certainly dialogue between the supporters and City.
I think the positive is that there is dialogue. It took far too long to get to that point, and I think that was more on the club, I think it's fair to say. But since they've had that meeting, the fans got a good result in that they were listened to. It would have been good for all the other issues, like the North Stand. That's another one that fans are very keen to find out about. It would have been good if that would have been announced at the same time. Hopefully this time to go away and sort of check out what's going on from both sides and come back. Hopefully that's a good thing. And yeah, I can see why some fans are questioning this next protest, but there are a lot of, there was a sort of like the silence was telling in that statement. It was just these two things were announcing, the rest is still to be decided, and the fans need answers. And I mean, you need to budget, don't you? If you're planning on supporting City next season, you need to know how much you're going to spend and what kind of ticket you want and all of that sort of thing. So positive steps, but it sort of needs the rest of it to know if it's a fully positive move or it's just maybe a smokescreen or anything else. But I don't know. I think we do have to say that freezing the ticket prices, we praise other clubs who do it. So we've got to say freezing ticket prices is a positive thing.
Yeah, positive steps there. Small steps forward, and positive step forward on the pitch last week with the victory over Palace, and hopefully that will continue on Saturday at Goodison Park for one final time. And nobody probably cares about the press box at Goodison Park, but it won't be missed, Joe. I know that much because I've squeezed myself into there enough times to know that it's one of the tighter press grounds in the country, and it does come with the odd obstruction as well. So I'm sure you'll be saying goodbye to Goodison Park with cramp come full time on Saturday.
Yeah, I've done the press box a couple of times, and it is you never get any sympathy, do you, for saying I'm squashed in a Premier League ground? But I've been in the away end as well, and it's all those wooden seats, isn't it? And like sort of bumping your head on the top. And I mean, I've had one of the best games I've been to in my life there, an FA Cup upset in that away end. So good memories of Goodison. So hopefully it's a good game on Saturday. And
as per usual, you'll be able to keep up to speed with all the coverage in the build up to the game. We've got Pep Guardiola's press conference on Good Friday, which Joe will be at, and then obviously at the game on Saturday with Simon Bajkowski as well. So keep up to speed with all the build up, the action, the analysis, the reaction, and everything else in between on the usual MEN channels. And we'll catch up again next week. Thanks very much for listening, and thanks for watching.